Hello, everyone. Welcome to our debate on service delivery for transition-aged youth and adults. This will be conducted as an informal debate, and we will be discussing the differences between empowerment and care as individuals with developmental disabilities transition into adulthood. My name is Autumn Andrus, and I will be introducing and concluding today's debate. With me, I have Holly Vandenberg and Stern Harris as our researchers. They will be discussing facts and findings from peer review articles. Stern is also our illustrator and has provided our PowerPoint and visuals. Wenpin Chang is our summarizer, and he will be summarizing the main points from our research findings. Then we will have Alexa Saliza and Kayla Akers as our fielders. They will be discussing questions related to our topic, current events, personal experience, and ethical responsibility. This debate will include research findings that explain how individuals with disabilities do not always have the same opportunities as those with disabilities and what opportunities they do have while transitioning into adulthood. When discussing empowerment and care for individuals, they are similar in a sense that we are finding ways to do what is best for each individual. Empowerment refers to providing resources and supporting maximum independence for the individual, while care refers to providing resources related to health and wellness, even if that means restricting their environment. Holly will now start a debate with the research findings.
The transition from adolescence to adulthood is a difficult time for people with autism spectrum disorder, and research has shown that there are poor outcomes for this population in areas such as education, vocational training, employment, housing, and healthcare. Schools have transition programs and are required to address transition planning by the student's 16th birthday, but these outcomes suggest that these programs are not meeting the needs of people with autism that are transitioning to adulthood. Statistics estimated by the Department of Labor in 2011 state that only 27% of adults with disabilities were employed compared to 70% of adults without disabilities. Wagner, Newman, and Cometto conducted a study where they evaluated the presence of goals related to post-secondary education, employment, living, and social development in school transition plans. For individuals with autism, they found that most of the plans contained employment-related goals. 22% outlined goals for competitive employment, 39% supported employment, and another 39% sheltered employment. Goals related to living skills were also common, with 58% of such goals designed to maximize functional independence and 28% of goals to live independently. Of the transition plans, 23% included goals related to attending a 2 to 4 year college, and 57% contain goals associated with social development needed to increase friendships and social interactions in adulthood. Research by Wimmeyer and Sherlock in 2001 stated that students with autism have had poor success in adulthood because schools have not prepared the students for adulthood, and they identified a number of guiding principles essential for the transition process for all youth, including those with autism. These principles include that transition efforts should start early, planning must be comprehensive, planning processes must consider a student's preferences and interests. The planning process should be considered a capacity building activity and consider the student's strengths. Student participation throughout the process is essential, as is family involvement. The transition planning process must be sensitive to diversity, and supports and services are useful because we all use them. Community-based activities are extremely beneficial for this population as well. The researchers discussed the necessary skills for self-determination that would lead to empowerment in adulthood, such as choice-making skills, decision-making skills, problem-solving skills, goal setting, independence, safety skills, and self-advocacy. Once adults with autism get to an age where they can be employed, they tend to have a high unemployment rate estimated between 50 and 75%. This high unemployment rate for adults with autism might be explained by the lack of services when people with autism reach adulthood, especially when it comes to obtaining employment. A major barrier to obtaining employment for people with autism is the job interviewing process, as they lack the social skills needed for this. A research study conducted by Smith and colleagues utilized virtual reality job training to help prepare adults with autism for job interviews. This program used simulated interviews based on hierarchical learning to facilitate job interview skills. The results of this study suggest that virtual reality interventions could help improve interview skills for adults with autism. Another more current study conducted brief surveys with 23 participants to evaluate their vocational outcomes at the 6-month follow-ups with a focus on whether they attained a position in either employment or competitive volunteering. Results of this study showed that those who had virtual reality training had greater chances of attaining competitive positions than the controls who did not have the virtual reality training. This initial evidence suggests that virtual reality could be a promising intervention that enhances vocational outcomes for young adults with high functioning autism. Another research study by Higgins and colleagues looks at the supports that were needed for adults with autism in the workplace to ensure success when they were faced with challenges that often happen in the workplace. Their research indicated that career education should focus on increasing awareness of job opportunities for adults with autism that go along with their interests and abilities, as well as providing them with opportunities to practice the employment skills that they'll need and to grow in their own self-confidence in those skills. This study highlighted tips for transition teams, including emphasizing avenues of relevant work experiences such as part-time jobs, internships, service learning, and community-based work experiences. They also suggested assisting students in writing resumes that highlight their skills and relevant experience, providing the students with scripts, role play scenarios, and immediate constructive feedback, and assisting in stress management training, tutoring, peer supports, mentorships, career counseling, and referrals to resources, as well as providing job coach services that include vocational training, restructuring of job duties, ensuring that employees complete these duties in the appropriate manner, and providing appropriate follow-up services. These researchers also provided tips for employers of people with autism, including the need to communicate with employers the advantages of hiring individuals with autism, such as their cognitive abilities, attention to detail, loyalty, and dependability. They also offered tips on assisting with problematic behaviors that may occur in the workplace, assisting employees with concentration by purchasing noise canceling headsets, relocating an employee's office to a space away from audible and visual distractions, or installing cubicle walls to reduce distractions. Overall, a lot of the research suggests that access to early interventions results in better outcomes. This is so important for them to have early intervention because access to services decreases dramatically in adulthood. This is often referred to as the service cliff. So it's important to focus on the skills needed in adulthood when they are transitioning so that they have those skills. Next, Stern is going to talk about another article.
Thank you, Holly. Taylor and Seltzer conducted a study using a sample of 66 individuals with autism and compared it with past research to determine how effective transition services from post-secondary education to adulthood were. Groups were divided by those who had an additional diagnosis of intellectual disability and those who did not. Nearly 25% of the sample fell into the category of those diagnosed with autism and no intellectual disability, but this group did not have a significant source of activities throughout the day, such as employment or a day habilitation program. Individuals' IQs, independent functioning, maladaptive behaviors, and autism symptoms were measured as well. Individuals in the study who had less independent functioning and more maladaptive behaviors or symptoms of autism were more likely to attend day habilitation programs. Individuals who had more independent functioning and less maladaptive behaviors or autism symptoms were more likely to have employment. The majority of the individuals with autism but no intellectual disability fell into the middle of these two, a moderate level of independence and a moderate level of maladaptive behavior. This study highlights an important population, individuals with autism but no intellectual disability. Though they are capable and qualified for daytime activities, they are not receiving these services in large. This gap is most likely, according to the researchers, due to poor service delivery and this population being left behind in the transitioning process from post-secondary education to adulthood. And now I will hand it over to Win Pin, who will talk about the empowering youth with autism during transition.
Okay, thanks, Stern. So I'm going to quickly summarizing the research that Holly just mentioned. So a majority of the people with autism spectrum disorder or intellectual developmental disability, they experience poor post-secondary or transitional services outcome, so such as employment, education, independent living. However, parents and young adults or children with or individuals with autism spectrum disorder, they have different perspectives about this transitional outcome and what can be done to help them to be success. In terms of parents' viewpoint on helping their child develop independence, the parent think there is a need for the child to recognize the importance of live independently at some point of their life. And the parent also think that the transition to greater independence should be approached carefully and with consideration of long-term outcome and their child's preference. And parents' viewpoint on their child's experience with education, generally that young adult on the spectrum, they need to have more holistic services than what's available. And parents also feel like they need to take an active role to help their children's daily living in order to help them manage and get through the college. So therefore, it is important that parents need to know how to meet with these kids' needs and how to help them to organizing supplemental support. And for the individuals like young adults or children with autism spectrum disorder, their perspectives on those transitional outcomes, such as the independence, it's the ability and opportunity for them to establish autonomy, both functionally and subjectively. And most important is having being success in this outcome will give them the general sense of long-term future, and they're also aware that the challenges are in ahead of them, but they want to have some kind of specific support in order to address those challenges. So in terms of the improvement and improvement, parents really want their child to have opportunity to work in some capacity, regardless of their impairment. So really, the parent think that empowerment given the kids the opportunity for social interaction and harness their strengths and interests, but also help them to be involved in the community and will foster their financial independence if they have a job. But it is so important that parents mentioned it is the work environment and the type of work need to be aligned the child's needs and then desire in order to make sure their success. And from the young child or young adult with spectrum perspectives, they think there are many barriers that impose them their working, and there's only a few facilitators in place to support them to be able to keep the improvement. So therefore, those young adults with autism, they think the workplace accommodation is really important to help them to be able to keep their job, okay? And so because many individuals with autism spectrum disorder, they still need some support in their life. So it is important that we need to make sure there is empowerment services that can help them to be success in the future. And in terms of perspectives of the care, there are two major concerns. It is because some of the adolescent adults with severe autism, they eventually are placed into long-term care or other support housing arrangement. So due to some of the health, due to some of the safety concern, so Guan and Lee find out that most of the individuals with autism spectrum disorder, they die at 36.2 years compared to the general population who die around 70 something years old. And most of the reason to cause those deaths is because a lot of those individuals with autism, they have a tendency to elope. So the occurrence of the elopement is very high. It's 50% higher than other general population. So it is important that why the parent think they need to keep them, some of the parents think they need to keep them in the house or some supportive housing due to those safety concerns. And there's also some legal issue concern that because those individuals with ASD has profound disability, parents or their guardian feel like they cannot take care of those legal things, so they feel like they need to take care of them. And the other perspectives about the care is the restriction and barrier to healthcare services. So in many cases, individuals with autism spectrum disorder will lose their insurance coverage and access to therapy during the transition to adulthood. Even some of them already initiate the services in adulthood, they still may have difficulty to maintain the services than other disability groups. And lack of the healthcare services and daytime activity after they graduate from the high school or after they graduate from the college make some of the parents has a concern that they need to continue to take care of them. And so that's the reason why some of the parents feel like it is important they can provide care. So next, Alexandra will be our fielder, and then she will present and answer some of the questions.
All right, thank you. So the two questions that I'll be focusing on are the ethical responsibility of BCBAs in terms of assisting clients transitioning between settings and how BCBAs can ensure empowerment is occurring for those clients. So BCBAs have many ethical responsibilities to follow. The compliance code includes 10 sections relevant to professional and ethical behavior analysts. But regarding the relevant codes when assisting clients transitioning between settings, I want to focus on 3 codes, which are 2.09, 4.02, and 4.09. So code 2.09 states that clients have the right to effective treatment. Behavior analysts have the responsibility to advocate for the appropriate amount and level of service and oversight required to meet the defined program goals. In those instances where more than one scientifically supported treatment has been established, additional factors may be considered in selecting these interventions, which includes client preferences. So that also brings up the next code, which is 4.02, which states that BCBAs must involve the client in the planning of and consent of for behavior change programs. Clients should be involved in choosing the intervention, highly concentrating on their interests and preferences. The last code I want to mention is code 4.09, which states using least restrictive procedures. If the client needs any modifications, it is the BCBA's responsibility to explain the program modifications and the reasons for those modifications to the client, as well as obtain consent to implement those. So the next question that I'll be answering is, how can behavior analysts help ensure empowerment is occurring for clients? To ensure empowerment is occurring for clients, BCBAs should advocate for the client and make sure to include the client in the process. Make sure their preferences are considered when it comes to planning their transitions. Meaningful integrated employment should be a goal for all individuals with ASD who wish to work and should be the first choice offered. Work experiences should begin while the students are in high school and include career exploration activities and assessments to determine task preferences. So I'd like to open the discussion to Kayla, who is going to share some personal experience related to this topic.
Thank you. The Hope Source Cafe is a transitional program offered to young adults with ASD who receive services at the Hope Source in Indianapolis, Indiana. In addition to this program, they also provide an apprenticeship program to clients. This program partners with community businesses such as Harvest Cafe Coffee and Tea be free, gluten-free, and no label at the table, all of which are local to Indianapolis, Indiana, or surrounding areas. Students who participate in this program engage in a 12-week rotation to target various executive functioning, social communication, and problem-solving goals within the Hope Source Cafe, as well as within the Hope Source Fitness Center.
Thank you, Kayla. Autumn, would you like to share your personal experience related to this topic?
Yes, I used to be a coordinator for a crisis group home where 2 teenage boys lived because they weren't successful in school or living with their own families because of their extremely challenging behaviors. So this topic of empowerment versus care came up a lot when we had new regulations from the state. Since it was a licensed group home, we weren't allowed to keep certain doors locked. We weren't allowed to keep food locked, as it was said to be withholding personal items from the clients. But since they had behavioral challenges, they would tear their food apart or throw it everywhere, so then they couldn't eat it anymore. One client would even eat raw meat, so that was something we would have to keep locked up. One client would tear his own money apart, so then he wouldn't be able to use it in the future. They would use almost anything as a weapon. So in this case, although we wanted them to be empowered and independent, we also had to restrict a lot of items in order to keep them safe and care for them. So now we'll move on to Kayla, who's our second fielder, to discuss core ethical principles and current topics.
By providing both care and empowerment for transition age youth with autism spectrum disorder, practitioners must remember to practice within their area of expertise and communicate with all staff members involved in the transition process. Providing care and empowerment will also allow clients to acquire skills needed to provide greater independence and help promote the client's self-sufficiency for life after the transition phase. The primary role of behavior analysts is to benefit others in whatever setting or situation in which they work. Behavior analysts must also remember to treat others as they would like to be treated and remain truthful in order to earn a reputation which will allow others to place trust in them and seek them out as dependable and reliable sources of providing effective and ethical treatment to individuals with ASD and other disabilities. Since many of the clients behavior analysts serve are unable to effectively represent themselves, it is their job to ensure that every client is treated with dignity and respect by working with them to increase their acquisition skills and make sure they are able to voice or signal their needs to those around them. By respecting the autonomy of clients, working to benefit them and their needs, and creating programs that accord them dignity, behavior analysts will automatically be treating clients with care and compassion. Finally, it is crucial for behavior analysts to stay up to date with new developments and updated rules and regulations to the field. By becoming aware of the latest research in the field and incorporating this research into treatment methods, behavior analysts will be ensuring that they are providing the highest standard of care, as well as interventions that are proper, justified, and worthy of consideration. The next question that I'm going to cover is what research, publications, or current trends support each side of the discussion. I'm going to talk about an article that we discovered at the beginning of October. On Monday, October 1st, 2019, President Donald Trump approved an extension of the nation's primary autism law, authoring $1.8 billion in spending on the developmental disorder in the coming years. He signed the Autism Collaboration, Accountability, Research, Education, and Support, Autism Cares Act prior to its expiration, which was set for the end of September. The act originated in 2006 and allocates funding for research, prevalence tracking, screening, professional training, and other government activities related to autism. The Autism Care Act calls for the Department of Health and Human Services to produce a report for Congress on the health and well-being of individuals with autism. Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey states, the comprehensive new law will fund critical biomedical autism research as well as the development of best practices to enhance the lives of persons with autism. We need answers now and treatment options and interventions that work. Next, you'll be hearing from Autumn again, and she will be providing some closing statements to this debate.
Overall, we've concluded that whether individuals with disabilities transition into a group home, school setting, employment, or any other organized program, we as providers should focus on empowerment for each individual as they transition into their adult years. Thank you for joining us.